Good. So let me invite, we'll start with Mukhtar. I think he's quite passionate in doing a lot of learning in this FSM 20 series courses. So Mukhtar, yeah, you can share what is basically the motivation, your motivation, as well as you can also mention what industry looking forward for that subject like machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Good evening, everyone. I am Professor Mukhtar Sama from Marwar University. I have done my BE and ME in the production engineering, uh, and I would like to solve the industry's problems. Okay, nowadays industry are facing a lot of problems. Okay, so that can be solved by this machine learning techniques. Okay, a lot of data are generated nowadays due to the advancement in this sensor technology. It is possible to generate a lot of data. Okay, but how to utilize that data, that is the biggest task. Okay, so that can be solved by using machine learning, and I want to implement this machine learning to solve industry's day-to-day challenges.
Okay, good. Do you have anything in mind where you advise that what kind of problem that this machine learning can address? Any quick one or
Okay.
two problem that you think about?
Yeah, one of the problem that when I'm looking for the project in the first FSM 201, I have
Yes.
visited one tiles company, ceramic tiles company. So
Mm-hmm.
they have a manual inspection system. Okay, so that tiles are, we know that tiles are classified in various class, that class 1, class 2, class 3, based on small dots or some marks or some breakage. Okay, so they, for that classifications, they are using manual process right now. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
they just separated manually, and it is some time consuming process, and also accuracy level is not good. So I want to implement this machine vision system using machine learning, so that automatic classification is possible of that defective tiles. That is the base, my main motive to attend this course. And I'm also looking to change my project, if you allow me, from that
Mm-hmm.
hydro manufacturing equipment to that tiles industries.
Yeah, certainly for this course you can choose a different project. That's not a problem at all. Where you will really find a good use case of the techniques that you will be learning can be applicable. Yeah, that's good. Next we'll take Sridhar.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Sridhar. I'm presently working as assistant professor in Savita Engineering College. My bachelor's in mechanical and master's in mechatronics. So, and I joined this course only because of the machine learning module. But somehow this course initiated, it wasn't really a good way, and it completely dragged us in each and every domain to a greater extent. So, and right now I'm feeling very happy that I'm going to learn something very new into the machine learning module, since I've felt very good experience with IoT course and augmented reality course. So I'm expecting the same in the machine learning modules. So as far as the project and the application point of view, so my use case will be in the predictive analytics. So I wanted to identify the exact remaining useful life for that part, or else when I wanted to replace the part, or when that has to be serviced. So that futuristic knowledge can be shown in the dashboard with the proper data analytics. So that is one use case for the mission components. Usually my case study was with a windmill. So usually I will be just taking this machine learning course to end with the project in the windmill. So the other idea also I have is like, during my master's course, we were working on a project, adaptive intelligent transportation system. Like it is just to identify total number of cars in the proper lane. So with respect to the number of cars allocated in the different lanes, so the control signal will be changing adaptively. So for that, we use basic image processing techniques, just image subtraction only we use, but it was not that efficient for the real-time implementation. So in that case, if I was aware of the machine learning modules or deep learning modules to properly recognize the car, so I would have just made my algorithm refined in that project itself. So I think maybe I will be just trying the same work again after completing the machine learning module. So these are the
Okay.
two outcomes I expect in the machine learning.
Great. I think good to hear all about your motivation for this machine learning. That's a really nice that all of you have some problem in your mind, and which you would like to try it out once you are going through the learning in this course. That's great.
Thank you.
So next I will take Dhwani because he joined first time this series.
Yeah, hello everyone. Good evening. So my name is Dhwani Kumar Pandya. I have 6 years of experience in industrial automation and more than 2 years of experience. I'm learning that different IoT and industrial 4.0 platform. So I'm very interested in the machine learning. Why? Because I have one application that is a chemical plant application. Their customer wants a closed loop predictive analysis. So they want to create one model. So that model will indicate the PLC, and it will give the backward compatibility to order PLC. That is the critical parameter should not be repeat. So that kind of modeling, I guess it is by using a anonymous code, by using the creative model technique, by using machine learning and Python model, we can achieve those kind of backward compatibility and handshaking between the model software application in the PLC. So whenever some critical aspect will come, that PLC will auto learn by the messaging coming from the Python model using that machine learning techniques. So there is one motivation, and I used to do some R&Ds regarding the different kind of model techniques and how to create a model to implement in the SCADA system, implement in the different kind of IoT gateways to communicate and create a dashboard, so that I can, as a customer or as an integrator, I can see where is the wrong, what is the issue, and I can without any going in the plant or in the area, through my machine learning technique and my model, I can resolve these issues and all. So that is why I'm very much interested in this course.
Great. I think because you bring the lot of industrial perspective in your learning, and then certainly that kind of a real use case implementation will be a good excitement for going through this kind of a course. So really good to hear that, and I think we look forward that, because our objective will remain twofold over here. On one side, we will be learning the technology component of the machine learning and the technology. And the other side, we'll also exploring the business aspect, business goal of this. So in this course, because whenever we talk about the new technologies, new areas, not many business are so receptive, as we have seen earlier also. And I'm sure that all of you, when you interact with these kind of a key terminology, people are not very comfortable, and even they appreciate the technology, they are not ready to implement it. So what are those methods, challenges, the barriers? We will discuss all those aspects as well. I think that's a good point. So now I'll come to, yeah. Anything you want to add?
No,
Okay, thanks. So next I will ask Akhilesh to introduce.
Good evening, everyone. So this is Akhilesh, and I'm currently working at FSM itself. Like I work on the robotics projects in the FSM, but I always had a passion to learn machine learning and to know like what exactly is machine learning. Even though I have done a couple of courses in my BTech, but I'm not really like I have limited myself, I guess. So I'm not really able to. Whenever I see a problem, I am not really able to judge. Okay, we can use machine learning to solve this problem. So I want to make my base and the concept stronger. So I had taken this course, and one application that I was eagerly looking to solve was like I want to implement this machine learning in the VLSI circuits. Suppose like because when it comes to the back end of VLSI, there are many different kinds of circuits that are developed for analog and digital systems. So just by looking at the circuit, if a system could be able to predict, okay, so this particular circuit can be used for amplification, or this particular circuit can be used as a PLL or whatever it is. So it would be of a great useful for the students as well as people who are learning in the institutes to know, okay, this circuit is used for so and so application. and the circuit can be modified in particular way. So this is what I'm looking at.
Good. I think, yeah, see, most of the time we have this kind of dilemma that what kind of problem we will be solving by machine learning, and in fact, how the problem can be formulated. That is also a very important aspect, and what are the different steps involved. And certainly, when we are talking about subject like machine learning in academics, the purpose and motive is completely different. And when we talk about the implementation of machine learning in manufacturing, I think we should follow the right practices for deployment of any technology in the industry. So what are that gap? Because we always find that something that works in the lab may not be going to work exactly as it is in the factory also, or that how you comfortably you will be in a position to deploy that actually. So I think we will try to cover up those challenges also in this course, because we'll not take this just an academic learning. This is going to be a subject which you, once you learn it, at least you should feel confident, and then will be able to take up some of the industrial implementation.
Yes,
That's
yes.
nice. Yeah, that's nice. So next, I will request Atul.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Atul Tehliani. I am a recently graduated mechanical engineer, and I have taken up this course series as a form of upskilling, because as I see my career being in the area of manufacturing in India, and these skill sets are going to be undeniably useful in the coming future. This is my motivation, and I would love to contribute in any manner to any industry. And sir, till now I have not identified a use case for it for this
Okay, a
particular
specific
course.
use case. Yeah, no issue, no issue. So during
Yes.
the course, we'll certainly help you out in formulating the way we have done in the previous courses.
Yes, sir.
So we look forward that, and there are a lot of problems, and even open-ended problems are available in the domain. Even if you are not able to access to the company immediately, at least you have a lot of problems available with a lot of data set to experiment on. So I will encourage that if you can pick up a real data set which is related to the manufacturing, because we'll still be confining our discussions and then elaborations around manufacturing. Otherwise, the machine learning has other more applications around.
Definitely, sir.
Good, good. And then Vishnu.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vishnu Kumar. I am automation engineer in FSM. So my motive for joining this machine learning course is basically I am from a background of a mechatronics engineer in BTech. So like somewhat to some extent mechanical and electronics is covered. Only the thing left is informatics. So I would like to concentrate on that, like learning the coding and then implementing some kind of algorithm so that it will be useful in my project. So my project is basically on legacy machines. Like I am working on smart lathe machine. So I am just looking forward for implementing this machine learning somehow, so that the smart lathe machine can have some kind of algorithm that will be helpful for predicting the remaining useful life of the tool. So I'm looking forward for this course.
Good, Vishnu. I think that is what we want, that wherever you get an opportunity to try out new technologies, you should attempt. I think this initiative for taking a level deeper than the awareness, because as we keep on mentioning that, certainly we all, because in this group, are well aware about this technology and what kind of problems can be addressed with it. And through this course, we are emphasizing more on the implementation perspective. It means most of the time we know the things, but something is hesitating or stopping me to try out the implementation part, or something is missing in between as a connecting block. And not only just a pilot, we look forward that whatever learning we'll take out from this course will also be at least giving you a vision to deploy it in a larger scale. Because in industry also, not many people are very clear what should be the real workflow for deployment of any machine learning based solution into the industry. And that's the reason that a lot of people are experimenting within the lab environment. They are developing, they are trying out some basic codes, but not many companies had deployed that at a large scale. So let's try to understand that perspective as well. Good. I think that's how we have taken the quick introduction from all of you, and it's really nice to start this course. So what I will just introduce you, certainly we are now at the course FSM 204. And we'll try to, as we going along, actually we'd like to merge the learning from the previous courses and then try to upgrade the projects with the new techniques that we are learning during this implementation. So that's good, and we look forward that, because these are the electives we are discussing right now. So AR, machine learning, and robotics was the elective, and recently I've added the new course, that is FSM 206. And we look forward that whatever, because digital twin, when we are talking about, it's certainly the agglomeration of all the previous technologies, and it's really required a lot of chunk from the machine learning component. So I think we look forward that those who complete this course successfully and understand the concepts, they may certainly be trying out some of these new learnings in the digital twin course. So this is the course structure, and that is how you are also familiar with it. This 204 will again be going through roughly 32 hours of learning in a month. And as I was mentioning, after the core courses, this is an elective, and those who are already following this masterclass series, they have already finished some of the elective, and then they will be taking this new elective. Evaluation scheme, as I was keeping it earlier, but I will still be flexible in modifying the component, because somewhere it require more attention to be done on the project, somewhere it required more attention to be paid on the lab part. So I will just try to adjust as per the requirement. But roughly we'll look forward that there will be the quizzes from the live sessions that we will be conducting, and we'll ask you to do some e-learning. And here it is very important, because we would like you to continue your learning during the week also. There are many concepts to be built up, as all of you have gone through the at least the on-ramp courses in the MATLAB. So such kind of a component that need to be get ready during the week. It's very important when we come to the lab, and then maybe discussion in the next session. So I think e-learning component or hands-on component beyond the active engagement hours is also very important part in this course. And certainly the labs will be more exciting for all of you, because you will be really applying those concepts and the learning in the lab, and then most of the technology part you will be grasping during the lab interaction. Most of the business aspect, the guidelines, all these things we are discussing in this live sessions. Certainly I will be touching upon some of the technology pieces also, but at the same time we will also be experimenting with these technologies during the lab. And then project is really the last, and I look forward that at least you will do good work in the machine learning projects, because, and that is what we keep exciting you, that let's not keep waiting till the end of the course, so that if you start early, you will be able to come out with a good implementation. And certainly once you are able to see it realized, actually whatever you thought about, once it get realized, you will really feel excited about the same. So what we keep now, these are the rough structure of the course. We have planned these 4 live sessions, where we will be starting discussion with the introduction part of the machine learning. And we will discuss about some of the technologies, how the machine learning can be implemented. And continuing from today, we will also be continuing on certain supervised and unsupervised learning technologies. We'll also be taking up some of the use cases of the predictive maintenance and the quality analytics, how that can be implemented. And then there are a few more use cases. So we would like to pick up more relevant use cases for discussion over here, and how the technology can be used to solve those problem areas. So that is how we will take the discussions in the live sessions. And e-learning, as I was mentioning, that some of the content I've listed over here, but as the course progress, I will also ask you to learn something more other than this. So we'll cover those basic requirements also. Lab sessions I have planned, certainly there are 3 technology I will be focusing during the course, because there are multiple ways you can deploy the machine learning, and you can implement machine learning use cases. So there are platforms, I should say, we should experiment with. One is the MATLAB one, because they have a lot of good tools available for quick visualization or quick experimentation. So we will do some labs initially on the MATLAB platform. But at the same time, everywhere you cannot see the possibility to use MATLAB, or there may be other possibility to try out a different open source technology. So we'll also be explaining you the way to deploy these algorithms using the Python. And then, though it is not mentioned over here, I would also like to touch upon how that can be deployed in an industrial platform. So you might have already gone through the IoT and the AR courses where we have used ThingWorks as a platform. So I would like to cover up one or two session or certain some sessions where I'm exciting to tell you how the ThingWorks analytics will work actually. So that is how the lab sessions will be conducted on these three different platforms. One is the MATLAB, another is the Python, and third is the analytics. So like ThingWorks Analytics, there are more, I should say the rapid development platforms are available in the market, because we don't want everyone to deep dwell into those algorithms and intricacies, because that should not come out as a barrier for deployment of any solution. And as all of us, in fact, if I see here, don't have any CS background as such. So we all come from a different domain of understanding. Most of us are working in the mechanical, mechatronics, automation, and we are looking forward for deployment of these technologies into the manufacturing. So certainly it's good, always good to know the ins and outs of the algorithm, but it's not always required to know so much details about the same. So in industry, certainly we look forward that all the kind of solution that we would like to deploy, they should be coming out from just a configuration and drag and drop provision. So most of the rapid development platforms give you that opportunity to work around. So you can experience that difference actually when we start with the MATLAB. It gives you both the flexibility on one side. It also gives you a programming language interface, and it also have a lot of apps and tools available to try out in a comfortable way without writing much of the code. So this is a kind of a platform you have. The second is completely in a programming environment. So Python based learning is complete the programming environment. So how you will deploy that those algorithms and use those algorithms, but still there are a lot of APIs are available. So there are a lot of APIs are available. So you can just call those functions without again writing all those functions yourself. So that is the another environment. And ThingWorks Analytics is completely industrial platform. So in fact, how you will deploy analytics problem in the industry can be very well learned from that platform as well. So that is the structure for this lab. For 8 hours lab, and certainly I look forward that you may be spending more time than 8 hours, because for the complete learning, apart from the guided labs, you will also be trying out something on your own also, and we will also be encouraging you to try out those solutions. Then comes the project, which we always keep mentioning. It's a 10 hours and it always consumes more time than the 10 hours of duration. What I feel that because it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of connecting the technologies and experimenting and then debugging the problems, and finally come out with some good results. So we look forward that this time also you will do some functional implementation of machine learning use case. And it is always encouraged that if you can combine multiple platforms also. So let's not be just confining to one platform. So it all depends how you take your use case and where those technology options are available. So we look forward that some of the good use cases can be implemented in the manufacturing. So that is all the structure for 32 hours of distribution during the course. So these are the three platforms which I was talking about, and we should get ourselves familiar with these basic platforms. So certainly the MATLAB is the one that you can try it out. And I am sure that all of you get an access to the MATLAB for this course. And I have already shared the instructions with all of you. At least you can start the 30 days online version if you don't have a license from your institute or organization. So I am assuming that all of you have access to the MATLAB platform, because that will be required tomorrow. May I request you to just quickly raise your hand to tell me that you already have the MATLAB available with you, because without that, the tomorrow's lab will be difficult. Yeah. So please just raise your hands that you have installed or have accounts created on the MATLAB online. And some of you may be using our own licenses. So that's what I can see here. So Akhilesh, Dhwani, and Sridhar, what is the state of MATLAB with you?
Sir, actually, sir, I have the software, but I haven't installed it. By tonight, I will be just installing the same.
Okay, okay. So please do that. Keep it ready for tomorrow's lab.
Yes, sir, sure.
And Dhwani, what
same with
Sure.
me. Yeah, same with me. I do have the software. I will install today and keep it ready
Okay.
for the next session.
Okay, great, great. And Vishnu,
Sir, I will be
already done. Sridhar, and yeah, Akhilesh.
Sir, I'll be using the web-based MATLAB, sir.
Okay, so there you have that access to 30 days version, or you will use
Yes,
FSM
yes.
license?
No, sir. I have access to the 30 days, sir. I have
Okay,
already worked on it. I mean, checked it out.
okay, okay. Fine, I think. So then we are ready with this, because that's the one, because it comes as a commercial software, but for this course, we would like to have that 30 days version, or it can also be extended if you're really working on the industrial problem, because MathWorks is already part of the FSM team, and they are also contributing. Maybe they are also helping in tomorrow's lab. So we always have their team available with us. So that will be great. So second, certainly Python doesn't require any such limitation. So you'll always have access to that Python, and we look forward that we will be using Google Colab environment, or if you want to experiment with your offline environment, that can also be tried out. And for ThingWorks Analytics, we will provide you the access to the ThingWorks platform, or again, you can go with the 30 days version of the ThingWorks, where you will get an analytics is coming as a part of that only. Though you have not explored in the past courses, you have only used the IoT part, but this analytics is available. So there are few good examples which you can try out. So probably as we go along, please try to get access to this ThingWorks also. Otherwise, I will advise you to use FSM ThingWorks licenses. So that is the third platform that you would like to use. So when it comes to the MathWorks, because that is the next lab that we will be having tomorrow. So that is how the workflow works with the machine learning implementation. This is the one of the workflow that we will be trying out for two different problems tomorrow. One is for the regression, another is for the classification. So it has all the tools available for getting the data inside the platform. That is the first thing, so that you get an access and explore the data. Because initially, before we start experimenting with any sort of data, we need to do exploratory data analysis. You need to understand, and the best way to understand is the visualization. So you can try to get some visualization of the data. You may also be able to get some statistics about the data. So these basic exploratory work can be done, and there are some of the tools available in the MATLAB to do that. And in fact, these kind of tools are available in most of the environment that you will work on. We'll discuss the importance of the data, what kind of analysis we look forward, but that is the first thing. And because most of the data sets, they are available in the tabular form or the comma separated data, we are mostly dealing with that kind of data. And whenever it comes for the deep learning, we will be having an image data also available. So most of the type of data we are dealing initially with because in machine learning problem, we will be dealing with the data which is available in the numbers and the text basically. So it's a text based data. So it is coming out in the text files or the spreadsheet. We'll also look forward that how you can extract the data from the database. That's another aspect. Though initial development and trials can be done from the offline files, but if you have to read out the data from the organization's database and process the analytics, so those kind of connectors we need to look forward. And then some of the data is coming in form of the binary files. So binary file data is not required initially, but as we go along, we'll see that whenever it is available. So image kind of data is a binary data. So that is how you need to understand the access to the data. We'll discuss that aspect. So this is just a quick workflow for tomorrow's understanding. And then you will be doing some kind of a pre-processing, cleaning, sorting, and that kind of, and removing the outliers. So that kind of a pre-processing is being done. The major difference between the machine learning and deep learning, can anyone just mention that? What difference is there in the deep learning and machine learning whenever it comes to the feature? Any understanding you have about the difference between the machine learning and deep learning problems?
Deep
Sir,
learning is a subset of machine learning.
No. Yes, certainly it's a subset. So we look forward that from the technical perspective, that is certainly the domain understanding. But in terms of specifically when we talk about the feature engineering,
Sir, machine learning usually deals with data, but when it comes to deep learning, we deal with a lot of images which has thousands of features. So it requires complex algorithms to solve. That's why we usually use deep learning for all this computer vision and the image related problems. But the classic machine learning algorithms doesn't work that well for images.
anyone else have some idea about this? So fine. So let me just quickly give you a glimpse, because all of you have gone through the machine learning on-ramp part. And there you realize that when we were trying to recognize the handwritten text, I'm sure that all of you have done this exercise. It's very important to understand the features, and the person who is implementing the algorithm, he need to extract the features. He need to identify the features basically. So that is the major difference when it comes to the deep learning. Because if I'm trying to write an alphabet, and as you have done that exercise, so if someone has written J, someone has written M and then V, now how you will be using the data to define the features. And most of the algorithms, or most of the problem set that you have, data set you have, we will try to put some basic statistics, and that can be considered as a feature. So most of the time we'll try out around so if I can say the mean of the data is like this, if the range of the data will be like this, if the slope of the data will be like this. So these are the basically characteristics of in the individual data space, which we would like to extract. And this part we will be doing ourselves. It's a very important part. So if you see that, I'm sure that you all have done that machine learning on-ramp part. So what kind of features you have used? Can you just let me know?
Aspect ratio.
Yeah, so one is the aspect ratio. Good. So aspect ratio defines basically what is the, so some alphabets are having a high aspect ratio, some has a low aspect ratio. Yeah, that's, what is the next one?
The time taken to write time.
Yeah, time taken to write that alphabet. Certainly, that's a duration basically. So duration and aspect ratio. Yeah, so duration and aspect ratio. So these are something that you are defining now from the data. You are extracting that these values, and so we are defining these are the features. So in most of the machine learning problem, the feature is to be defined by the person who would like to implement this. These are the two quick things, but as you realize towards the end of the machine learning on-ramp problem, you find that this has been tried out with 3 alphabets, but later when you tried out with a data set of 13 alphabets, then it is failing quite significantly. Have you realized that? Have you seen that? So while you did that exercise, I think that's something you need to observe, that whatever aspect ratio and the duration as a feature you have identified for 3 alphabets, J, M, and V, and later on when it has been expanded for the data set of 13 alphabets, and then the prediction rate falls very low. It means that these two features are not enough basically to classify all these alphabets which you are trying to do by the handwritten one. It means that you require more such features which you need to identify. Now you can say that how many maxima and minimas are there into an alphabet. That's an interesting way. So you can see that while you are writing M, there will be the 2 maxima are coming and the 3 minima will be there. So something of that sort. So then you will be applying some mathematics basically to find out how to find out those minima from the data that is available. So that is the way we need to see, and certainly we will put more statistics, and we'll say the standard deviation between this data. We'll put that variance as one of the method. We will put the means and the median, and all these basically can be put for the alphabet recognition. And if you see that most of the time people have in fact 60-70 features basically initially to start with. So initially we will be targeting some number of features, but once you try to apply for a bigger data set, then you will see the accuracy of the prediction is now getting affected. So you need to put more features. But once you have very large number of features, then again you have to prioritize them, and again you have to just find out which are the important features. So all these methods are part of the learning of this. So feature engineering is an important aspect of the machine learning. Now,
So
contrast to that,
sorry to interview here, sir.
Yeah.
So that feature is, can we tell that feature is a probability? Because the much probability we find out, more accurate result we can get. So
No,
is it related to the probability?
No. Probability of what? So from the data set, let's see if I'm just analyzing a data set about certain behavior actually. Now,
Okay.
in that data set, what probability means basically? So probability will not be coming out so explicitly. For example, let's say the character that we are writing. There is nothing like probability that we can say that about this character. Same is also with, for example, I'm trying to analyze the vibration data actually. So in the vibration signal, I don't see there is something probability which will help me immediately. And what probability, what kind of probability it is. So we need to be clear when we are saying this is a feature, what that feature means for that particular data. So can you give an example where you see the probability can be considered as a feature?
So for example, there is lots of data is backend for is going, and my threshold is set to the some value called 59, and I want the accurate result that before it crossing the 59, I need to stop because 59 is my threshold, and I don't want to go beyond the 59. So I need to create that kind of modeling model, so I can put some probability, so I can give take the accurate result.
Then you are talking about the prediction part actually. Then you are talking about the outcome of the whole algorithm. So feature comes quite early actually. So feature is something which will be giving me indication that how it is approaching the threshold actually.
Okay.
And so there may be more sensor inputs or sensor signals which will be giving me some indication that now with this combination of the features will now be taking it to the threshold value. So those things will be considered as a feature here.
Okay, I understand.
So in this case, what I'm just trying to explain, we will certainly go in detail as we go along. I'm just trying to give you an idea that in case of an machine learning problems, features you are supposed to define, and it's a very important part. So that's onus comes on to you, how correctly you have taken the features, how you are defining them, and again revisit that problem that you have attempted in an on-ramp one. I'm not sure that you have tried out on those 13 data numbers. Anybody tried out on that, because that comes the last as an assignment in the problems. It's kept as an optional. So anybody tried out on 13 alphabets towards the end of the on-ramp course? So you can raise your hands if you have done that.
Classification for 13 alphabets, right, sir?
Yeah, classification for 13 alphabets.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that there you find that there's a lot of misclassification rate actually. Yeah. So that's good. And then it suggests also if you can attempt now with certain more additional features, because that you are trying with based on the 2 features only, the aspect ratio and the duration.
Yeah, 3 features.
But now if you try to define and identify, because these kind of exercise will basically bring out more learning to you. Now, as I was mentioning, can you say the number of maxima in the alphabet is basically as one of the feature? So then it will help you actually. So similarly, you can find out more such features and just play around with the same data, because that's a very simplest data set, and you can keep on experimenting around that. In fact, the open source data set available for recognizing the handwriting data set is having a lot many features. I think around 60 or 70 features are there. So that also you can look at it. We also try to provide the access to some of the selective data set. We'll not access, we'll just be letting you know these are the data sets where you can experiment around. Yeah, Mukhtar, you want to say something?
What is the difference between features and variables? Both are same or different?
No, they are different actually. So features will be based on the pattern in the variables. So whatever you are looking inside the data. So variables are just getting the data. And for example, what are the variables you have used in the handwritten data set? This on-ramp problem, the data
Aspect
that you
ratio
started.
and
No, those are the
aspect ratio.
features. The variables are only 3 actually that you have started your data set. So one is
Yeah.
basically the X position, Y position,
Y
and the
position.
pressure. And the time was also there actually. So those are the variables. Those are the initial data that you are capturing about that variation of the X and Y coordinates and the time that it has taken and the pressure that you have applied. Features are basically coming from the complete data, and then you will be finding out some pattern inside it. That will be the feature.
So that means features are generated from variables.
Yeah, features are to be extracted from the variables. So it's a kind of an information. Now data you are having now, you are extracting some of the pattern and the information out of that data, and that will be now attributes basically which will be impacting your outcomes.
Okay,
Fine.
thank you, sir.
Okay.
Fine.
Atul, you have raised your hand. Anything you want to mention?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So I'm just giving you a glance of this. Certainly we will dwell deep into this. So what I'm just trying to say, whatever activity you are doing for the feature extraction is now being taken care of automatically by the algorithm in the deep learning. So you get rid of feature extraction part in the deep learning algorithms. Deep learning, the neural network will extract those features for you. So that's a kind of a difference you will realize. So that's an interesting one. And if you get time, please attempt the deep learning on-ramp also. It's again available for free. And you can just see the difference between the two, because again, it will take another 2 hours for you to complete that. But then you will be figuring out what would be the workflow and how the deep learning problem will be get solved and how the machine learning problem will get solved. So there the feature extraction is done by the neural network algorithm. That is how there are multiple layers of the neural nets which are extracting the features from the data. For image, it's very difficult for you to define those features. So from the trained the training data, this algorithm is now extracting the features themselves. Fine. So then comes certainly the model training part, and then once model is not predicting well, then you may be tuning that algorithm by certain parameters. So that is the model tuning part is required. And then after that, you will have the ready to deploy this model. Once it is being fully trained, tested, and validated, then finally you will integrate the analytics into the implementation. Just a short workflow, but it's really good to know in the beginning itself. Certainly, these are the Python libraries. Again, I look forward that you should have some kind of an hands-on on these Python libraries before we come to the lab courses, because I will not be covering the basic learning on the Python library. So maybe because Devesh is assisting me in creating the lab, so he has already created some of the sheets for you to try it out. So I will share those sheets with you, so that the basic learning on the Python libraries will be done by you on your own. So you can just have a quick, it's a very simple one. The way you have done some kind of an on-ramp on the MATLAB, so similarly, the basics can be attempted. And because they are, again, a collection of the functions, so there are a lot of functions in the library. So some of the common functions will help you over here. MATLAB will give you ready to use drag and drop options available. With the help of apps it is available, but in case of a Python you need to do all on your own. So I think these are the basic libraries that you will be attempting on. So it's certainly to deal with the multidimensional arrays and matrices. So what kind of high level mathematical functions are available to manipulate the arrays and matrices that are available in NumPy. It's basically to deal with the data structure. So it will be used in the EDA also initially. And then Plotly is for visualization. So you can use it for visualization. So none of these are the machine learning libraries. So please take care of that. These are just 3 libraries which will prepare your data and helping you to get the data ready. So these scikit-learn is basically the machine learning library for the Python. So it has all those functions for the classification, regression, and most of the algorithms which are commonly used. These algorithms are available in the scikit-learn. And then another data visualization library is the Seaborn, which again based on, it's a little high level this library, which is using Matplotlib at the bottom. So again, because Python has been used significantly for this, and the installation that you are supposed to have would be the Anaconda installation for Python. So I'm not sure which installation you have done for Python. So can I have a quick idea about how many of you are familiar with the Python? So, and to what level? Because it's a small group, you can tell quickly.
Yeah, so I started Python in W3 school. So basic, printing operation, then addition, integer, float, the data types operation, that basic things we know.
Okay, fine. I think
Yeah.
so. What we will do, we will be at least create some of the practical lab sheets through which you can experiment more about the functions that are being used in the machine learning. Yeah. Next.
Sir, I have did some Coursera courses, so basics I know.
Okay, fine.
I have did some in Jupyter book also.
Okay, okay, nice.
I have some done basic Python programming in Google Colab.
Good. So what I assume that all of you are at least familiar with, once you at least see the Python code, you will be able to figure it out, how this function is being used, what are the variables, how what the operations are being done. So those basic understanding is also good enough to try out the different implementation in Python in this course. Anyone who is not completely aware of this, is completely unaware of this Python, not done anything hands-on on this Python? No, it's good at least. So all of you have some basic learning on Python, and if you have the basic learning and understanding, that will be good enough over here. So that's good. So rest of the resources we'll provide you. So you can just do those specific tasks, then it will be building your more good learning about the Python implementation. Another one is basically the analytics platform, that is the ThingWorx Analytics. And we will be implementing this vehicle predictive pre-failure detection. This is one of the exercise we will do in the lab. And this is really exciting those who worked on the ThingWorx earlier. What we will be trying to do, we'll be just taking a hypothetical problem of an engine, and we would like to simulate the low grease conditions in the engine. So the good business case that has been built around this is that there are two sensors, and which are generating the vibration data in different modes. So the 5 modes of the sensor 1 data, and then 5 modes of the sensor 2 data is being made available. And now the company is willing to predict basically when the engine will go low in grease with this kind of a vibration pattern. More important that how you will be prioritizing, or I should say extracting the main indicator over here. So out of these two sensors, we will really appreciate the way it helped us in eliminating one sensor. So what we realized that towards the end of this analysis, that the signature of one sensor is good enough to predict the low grease condition. So if you see that such kind of outcomes will certainly save a lot. So if I'm going to put two sensor on each engine, and from analytics, once I derive the conclusion that, yeah, the one sensor is good enough to give me an indicator of the low grease, and the second sensor is not going to predict me that much. So I can immediately save a lot on that. So apart from I'm giving the same features of the prediction of the low grease, but I am not spending much onto that because I can save cost of the sensor. So such kind of decision may also be taken with the help of analytics. So this is the another platform we will work upon. So what I would like to suggest, please keep this also ready, because it requires a little bit additional learning to happen before we come to the lab component or just trying out this whole solution. There's a concept of the micro edge server. So EMSs are there in the ThingWorx platform. So if you can see here, the initial activity is to create an environment is to get the data. And in this case, because we would like to build an engine simulator, we would like to try out how that engine simulated data will be now coming into the ThingWorx. So previously what you have done that you have done some experiment, get some data into the IoT. Sometimes you may be simulating through the CAP server, somewhere you may be simulating through one of the PLC that you will get that data. But here what we want a specific data. And this is one of the good feature in the ThingWorx, that you can create a micro edge server. So I will let you know which tutorial you should follow, because that part I will not be explaining. So you can use any of the Windows, you can use any of the Ubuntu machine or the Windows machine, or if you want to play around in a better way, you can use any of the Raspberry Pi board. You can convert them into any of the edge server. So you can create any of these micro edge servers, and then you can configure that micro edge server so that once you create a thing into the ThingWorx IoT platform, this data will be now getting plugged into the IoT platform. Why this learning is very important when you go for the industrial deployment of the analytics. Now, we are still not very clear about the workflow. If you develop something in Python, how you will deploy into the commercial applications. Second thing, if you are trying out with the MATLAB also, so you test the algorithms, you build the algorithms, but we need to know what should be the deployment route. And that's what I will cover you maybe in the next session, how you can deploy the scalable machine learning actually. And there it comes very important, what kind of platform you are using. And if you recall, I have given a lot of emphasis on IoT platform when we discuss in the IoT course. What are the challenges if you go without IoT platform, and what kind of benefit you will get when you implement using a platform. So in this case also, we would like to, because we have already learned that workflow earlier to get the data into the IoT platform. So at least this time what we will be attempting, we will be getting the data from this edge micro server. So I can just create one of the application which will push the data into the IoT platform, and this data is simulating almost an engine data. And then what I will do, I will train my algorithm based on the available data set. So I can have a 30,000, 40,000 data points through which I will train the algorithm. But once the algorithm is trained and deployed actually, now I would like to connect my real-time device to send the data, and the prediction should go back. So this kind of a model implementation is a good learning in these 7 steps which are being mentioned over here. So we will establish the connectivity. That is what the step 1, connect with the micro edge server. Step 2, now we are trying to build an engine simulator using the EMS. So that's edge micro server. Now we'll create an engine simulator. We will require or may not require, because if training you already have an offline data available, otherwise you can also make use of this data to store, and then you can use that for training. After that, we'll come to the analytics. So build the engine analytical model. So now you will realize the difference, the way you have implemented workflow in the MATLAB in Python and how it works in the analytics platform. And finally, once you have built the analytical model, how you will manage this analytical model, or basically how you will make this model operational. Once you develop the model, once you tested the model, how you will deploy, how you will make this model working in the for the prediction. So how that will be made operational. So that is the step 5 over here. And finally, once whatever the prediction coming out from this model, how you would like to visualize that and how you would like to use it actually. So that is where the role of mashup and UI or the subscription and the event can be created around that. You have already done some of those things. And later, certainly you will be reporting the benefit of this analytics coming out. So delivery part actually. So experience, how you enhance the engine failure visualization. Certainly it's all play around of the GUI and those features. So this is another workflow we would like to experiment as we go along in the course. I just come back to this slide, which we have taken in the FSM 201 course. And again, we'll be emphasizing that now there are certain key technologies which are dependent on the machine learning here. So if you can see here, the predictive maintenance is the one, process visualization and automation, because we would like to put the analytics also to be visualized and then give you an indicator of certain behavior. And most of that important part is the digital twin part. So that's how we are picking up some of the key implementation. In fact, the second one which I have left out over here is the big data driven process and quality optimization is also kind of a machine learning problem, how you are dealing with a bigger data. So there are, with this report, if we go with, I think we are trying to attack some of the key technologies. And if you are really capturing these technologies at this stage, you will be able to contribute more towards in this domain. So you will be getting yourself ready for the deployment of the smart manufacturing and creating a digital factories. So certainly the three which we are putting at a lower digital twin level, we will be covering that in FSM 206 course. But we'll try to see how the machine learning component and predictive part that we will be implementing in this course. So you'll understand at least the complete workflow here. So these are some of the key terminologies I would like to highlight, though I have covered this in an overview course, but because we are starting afresh and when we are addressing the data, we will be understanding. So whenever we take the data set, so now if you can see here, we will be getting this data in Excel file or CSV or through the database connectors. We'll be having this data available to us. And then in this data set, these are the variables basically, and these are coming as a part of the training data. So what Mukhtar was mentioning about, so material, spindle speed, feed rate, depth of cut, these are the variables. And then this is something we are trying to predict now. So in fact, Dhwani, you are mentioning about the outcome. No? So this is something we are targeting, that it should not touch the threshold level. It should not reach to that level that I am interested in right now. So that is the target variable. So there are certain training data, that is the attributes, we call them an attributes over here. So individual variable is an attribute over here. And the combination of these attributes is basically going to give me an indicator toward the target variable. What should be the target variable? So in this case, because this data is a machining data, so we kept the target variable as a tool breakage. So we will be analyzing the inputs like which material it is being used, which spindle speed we have run this operation. So each data set that you are getting or each row that you are getting here is an observation. So if you conduct one experiment, you will get one observation. So once you have conducted 100 experiments, you will get the 100 observations. In each observations, you have certain number of attributes, and there will be one target or one outcome that you look forward as a prediction over here. So that is what the basic key terminologies that we will be using here. And certainly what we will be doing, we'll be initially training the data with the known outcomes. So we will be having, that is what we will go in a supervised way. So we know the target variables in advance after conducting the experiments. And after the training data is being used to train the model, and then I will be giving a new data set over here. So for a new experiment, then it will be going to give me a prediction out of that. So that is the basic understanding that we should have. Now, when it comes for the problem solving process using machine learning, and I'm sure that we are all familiar with the way it should go. So workflow we were discussing with the MATLAB also. So here also we'll go with the same way. The initial start point is how to acquire the data. So now when I was giving you an example of an vehicle data that you need to capture the sensors that are integrated with the engine and they are sending you the data. Data acquisition, you have to think in terms of the hardware actually, and in terms of the connectivity. So that's important, because when we want to automate the work or this predictive workflow to happen, we need to have the integration in such a way that data will be now automatically flowing into the workflow. It means that, for example, I'm analyzing using a platform, and then data should come in the platform. So which is the source of the data, in what format that data will be coming into this, and then how I will be feeding this data for processing inside the machine learning algorithm. So data acquisition is one thing, and certainly we look forward for data initially for training till your model is not ready to deploy. We will be acquiring the data initially for just training the model. So it's not always that as soon as the data will start coming and you will be able to start using for prediction. So that is how the workflow I'm trying to explain you now. what kind of data cleaning you look forward? So I am sure that you might have heard about the data cleaning. So what kind of issues you have in the data? So I'm sure that you might have seen some of the Excel based data, or there are certain issues that you need to remove, because see, it's like this, whatever good data that you will be feeding into the model, actually the prediction will be that accurate. So if I'm training my model based on the inaccurate data, or which is not reliable data, or there's an erroneous entries into that data, then whenever the real scenario for prediction will come up, it will not be going to give me a right predictions. So it's like something like that. If you put a good ingredient, then the outcome will be good, actually. So in that case, this data understanding is very important. I just want to emphasize one aspect over here, which is a very important distinctive feature when we always think about machine learning and deployment of machine learning problem. We always think about the data scientists. We always think about the people who know the computing, who know the statistics, who know the data. Here is the big differentiator over here. And we always place the people who have the domain knowledge above all these people, because for a data scientist, all numbers, all alphabets are same data source. Fine. Only the person who have a domain understanding, he will understand which is the good data, which is the bad data, actually. And certainly statisticians only will be applying certain of the statistics and then maybe filtering it out. But again, he may not be able to segregate that this is really the good indicator for his own the business application. So I think that's an important point to understand. So understanding the data, and then what kind of cleaning is required. So quickly we'll take one or two inputs regarding the data cleaning. When I say data cleaning, what you understand from that? Can you give one example of the data cleaning?
The variable that is continue, sir.
Sir, there might be some data that is being missing in the data set, or some of the data might be skewed. So that data needs to be cleaned.
Yes. First of all, you talked about the missing data. That is certainly one type of data we will consider as required to be clean. Vishnu, you are mentioning something?
Yes, sir. Like in case of roughness, we have some peaks and valleys. So if we are considering some kind of tolerance or some kind of range, the values beyond that is considered as a noise. So that can be cleaned.
Yeah, so within the range, if it the outliers, we normally call them an outliers. Whenever a particular data is going outside the limits that is not expected, we call it an outlier. So the empty data which is absent, which is not available, we'll take the second as an outlier. Third could be anyone else want to add, Dhoni?
Yeah. So sometimes in the industry,
like some unknown strings or something else, like some ASCII values or some clubbed characteristics may be coming if the sensor having
jumbled characters. Erroneous means jumbled character which are not matching into the same field. I think that is what I see. Yeah, Dhoni, you are mentioning something.
Yeah. So sometimes in industry, some sensor data is coming, and if the channel is open, so if we the channel is generally 4 to 20 milliamps. So if the channel is open, we get some raw data. So this is unnecessary of data is come along with the accurate data. So that kind of raw data we need to cleaning up.
Correct. And another one common, in fact, people have made function to remove that. That is the not a number, NaN. You might have received some of the data, maybe because you might have applied some of the operation onto the incoming data, and sometimes you end up in getting an NaN kind of a data into that. So in fact, there are certain functions to eliminate or remove that NaN value also. So I think these are some of the basic data cleaning exercise to be done. It's really nice. At least you are familiar with this. Now from here, what we are doing, we are basically taking out some part of the data for testing. Because what we want before we want to see that this model is now ready for deployment, we would like to verify actually whatever and this testing is also helpful in tuning the parameters also. So what we can do, we will split the whole data into the test and training data. That is how we will be going about. So I'm just discussing this as a supervised learning method. So if you see here, I've just taken the data into the test and train, and then I will carry on the training of the model from the train data, and then I will be training this model, and then outcome of the model will then be tested with this test data. So whatever once the model is trained, then we will be evaluating with the test data. So I think that is what, if I just again correlate with the same alphabet handwriting problem, so you can see that you have already split some of the character data into the train, and for example, I have captured the handwritten alphabet J by 100 people actually. So they have, in fact, you might have seen that there's a left hand written data, it's in a right hand written data, that kind of data is also there. So what you can do, you can just keep some of the data, maybe the 20% you can take out for testing and 80% you will be using for training. And once the model is get trained, we will evaluate that whatever, because in test data, you know the outcome. The good thing is that because you already know the what's the target value over there. So alphabet for which you are analyzing the file, you know that this is for the alphabet J or alphabet M or something like that. So after you use the test data into the model, you'll get to know the predictions, and from the predictions you can compare with the real value. And how you'll evaluate that, you might have gone through that understanding of the confusion matrix. So how many of you are familiar with the confusion matrix? Have you heard about this term?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I think you have done it also in the on-ramp part. So you have created a confusion matrix. There are certain functions. And so what you get to know from the confusion matrix?
The number of outcomes that were truly classified, and the number of outcomes that were misclassified, and the number and the false positive and the false negative cases.
Correct.
The
So
outcomes that are actually,
yeah, correct. So from that matrix itself, you will be able to get a sense about the evaluation actually. So which are the misclassifiers basically? So which value is misclassified as what actually? For example, if you are predicting the J as I, most of the, so that because they are very close to each other, so it's quite possible that most of the J being identified as a I or I being identified as a J. So that kind of a misclassification can be easily understood. Now that evaluation will basically now help you in fine tuning, because that's a very important part. Now which either you have to look into the features again, the features that you have used basically for training are not enough to make a distinction between I and J. So you need to evaluate more features to make that distinction clear. So that is the way that this evaluation has to happen, and then you will take that input for fine tuning the model again. So maybe, for example, in the K nearest neighbor kind of an algorithm, you may be playing around with the value of the K. So you can see that with a particular K equal to 3, you will be able to get the prediction which is 86% correct. Or with the value of the 5, you will even be able to improve it. And if you take just 1 only, then your model is deteriorating. So you will be able to see the impact of certain algorithmic parameters, and then you will be playing around to just fine tune the model. So that is how it has to go about. And once you make sure that this has happened, actually, once you are confident enough that now your model is now predicting correctly, because you have already tested the model with the various type of data, and there are various means that how you will be training and testing, how you will be using the different data set, or how you will be mixing the data set for training and testing. So that is how you can just validate with this. So there's a concept of the cross validation, that you will be just validating with a different combination of the train and test this evaluation, so that your training is not biased and your this verification will not be biased with just one type of test data. So there are all these are all methods available. So some of you may be attempting tomorrow when you do experiment. So once you come to know about something that you are learning, then as much as you play around with that feature, I think you will be able to get a depth inside it. So this is just, though it looked like a simple blocks, but once you are going to try it out and deploy them, I think then you will be get to know the ins and outs. Now, there's always a trap, what I always see that, because the domain is such that there are n number of models coming out these days. So that's how every time finding out a suitable algorithm, I should say, when I say model is basically the algorithm. So don't feel that you should know all the algorithms on your own, first of all. The another thing is that these softwares are giving you an opportunity to just try out without going too much deep into those algorithms. Only when you want to know specifics about that algorithm, you can read about that. As you have seen that in the MATLAB, you have that regression learner app as well as the classification learner app. So they basically bring out all the models to you, and they also will be devising the methods that your data will be get trained on all the models, and then it will give you a comparison. So that kind of a workflow basically help you and then save a lot of time. Because see, when we are learning machine learning and we are trying to deploy this technique into the industry, we don't have much time to play around. We are not doing just an academic exercise. We are not supposed to get a PhD in the machine learning. Our objective is basically with the basic minimal learning, I will be able to give the results which are of business value, and how it is going to impact the business. I'm just taking this course from that perspective. Anyone is interested in knowing the more statistics and then maybe understanding the depth of the algorithms and playing around the algorithms, I think there are a lot of academic courses are available on the statistics as well as the machine learning. So they will be taking you too deep into the mathematics as well as the explaining the algorithmic part, and then how the new algorithms can be built upon, how the fine tuning can be. Certainly those who want to go into the research in these areas, they can play around with that. But objective of this kind of a practical learning course, where we are more emphasizing on the implementation part, our objective is to just know which is the best algorithm actually. What are the workflow which I can just use? What are the apps that are available which I can use? What are the functions that are available if I can use? We'll be able to give in a comparison between the 10 clustering algorithm, or maybe the 10 classification algorithm, or the similar regression algorithm. That will serve my purpose actually. Once I come out with that, yeah, support vector machine will give you a better classification for me. It's good that I will be just deploying that. I will be exporting the model. So MATLAB will give you that advantage. So if you can see that once you go with this learner apps, that will save a lot of initial development time. And once your model is ready to deploy, then you need to see how to deploy that model. So again, the deployment is a very important part. And in fact, that is what I was discussing with MathWorks also. So once I train the model, once I evaluate the model, how to deploy that so that my real-time data will come to the trained model, and the prediction will be now made available to the person who is looking forward for the same. We'll see that the most of the machine learning projects are not performing because people stopped at the trained level and the model is ready, fine-tuned, but that is not being put into the actual use. Unless you are not putting the model into the actual use, the whole initiative of attempting this is not just to get a visualization or the initial exploration, but it's basically need to be deployed also. That is what the complete workflow for the supervised learning that I would like you to understand these blocks. And now when we do the practical learning, we will understand what are these individual blocks will be. Same is with the unsupervised learning workflow. Here we will approach the same way, but we are not splitting the data into the test data because we don't know what to test. In case of an unsupervised way, because we don't have a labels onto the data, because when we talk about the supervised and unsupervised, just understanding that we don't know anything about the data. So we don't know the target variable over here. We only know there's some pattern in the data. So we need to just run and train the algorithm so that it can just cluster them in a different groups. And then we will see that how much those groups are overlapping or coming out distinct. And then that is how we will be just evaluate. So we will be just fine tuning them so that the individual clusters will be appearing very clear. So that is what could be attempted over here. So And after you will find that the clusters are clear, then again, so unsupervised models are not being deployed as it is, because they are always used in the beginning itself to at least identify the pattern. Still you need to classify them, or you need to identify that what this cluster means. So from a deployment perspective or from a business outcome perspective, I should be very clear what this cluster indicate, what is the behavior that this cluster is representing. And then again we'll be going, so after the unsupervised version, we look forward for the supervised implementation also. This is normally used in the identification of the unknown data, and certainly sometimes it is also used for finding out the anomalous behavior which is not being predicted earlier. So there you can classify that this is a normal, this is an abnormal. That's only the clustering that you will be doing over here. Yeah, Mukhtar.
Can we say fuzzy logic as unsupervised learning algorithm?
Fuzzy logic as such algorithm, I cannot say them as a supervised or unsupervised.
Because in that C clustering methods, we are producing the clusters.
I'm not sure right now. Yeah, I'm not sure right now. Because there are many algorithms in the fuzzy logic also, and for what we are deploying that fuzzy logic function, that is also important. Maybe the same will be used for the clustering also, but same sometimes will be used also for the labeled data also. So I'm not sure, because it may be a specific implementation where you will be using it for clustering, then it is an unsupervised method.
Okay, sir.
So if you see here, we are basically trying to develop and then use some of the predictive algorithms over here. And the most important part is that we will be trying to improve the situational intelligence. And so that's how machine learning is coming out as a part of the AI, where we would like to improve the intelligence over there. So earlier you might have remembered we talked about the insight. So I think Mukhtar has given a very nice talk on the actionable insight. And now when we talk about this course, we will be talking more about the actionable intelligence. So we'll see that. I think that's an interesting terminology coming out. So we would like to improve that situational intelligence. So this is what we were discussing, that most of the problems in the machine learning are falling into the category of the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Now, again, we have the labels over here. It means that we know the name of the outcomes or name of the target variable. That is what we call the labels over here. And if the labels are category, it's falling into this category, then it is a classification problem. If the labels are the numbers, I think that's a very common understanding, is continuous. That is, we want to predict a value out of this, then it's a regression. Any example you can give of the regression right now? So, so classification, I'm sure that all of you know the way we are discussing, but any quick example of a regression where your labels are continuous?
Tensile strength of material.
A tensile strength of the material. Yeah, if you are trying to predict that, yeah, it will be. Yeah, it will be. So if it is a material science problem, for example, if it's a material science problem, so we know the initial ingredient as an attributes, and then outcome is a material whose tensile strength I would like to predict, and that is basically given a regression problem.
In machining tool life.
Machining tool life, yeah. Machine tool life, when you are going to measure in terms of the minutes, I think that is a regression problem. Good. Anyone else? So I want at least one example.
Share market values the ups and downs of the plot.
Yeah. So share prices is basically in a continuous. Yeah, good. Atul. Akhilesh.
Sure.
Yeah, no issue. Akhilesh.
No, sir, nothing is coming.
Okay, good. I think there's a very common regression problem all machine learning people keep on discussing, is the house pricing problem. Have you heard about that? Yeah. So people like to Pardon?
Vast and house price, right, sir? The
Yeah,
data
they
set.
want to predict the house price because they're with the certain features, locality, certain things, so they know the attributes, and based on that they collected the data. So most of the property owners, the brokers basically, they collect the data, and then you can use that data to predict the price of a house in a particular locality with certain features. So that is again a very common regression and problem. Good, that so we will be attempting a regression problem tomorrow, and that is miles per gallon. We would like to predict the miles per gallon of a vehicle. So that's an interesting problem that you will attempt. So that is where we will be trying to predict something which is continuous data. So that is what we call the regression. And for the label and for classification, certainly we would like to put the data into certain category. I think that is what the classification is. And then second one is the type which we are discussing is the unsupervised. So we are not predicting any label over here. So we are just trying to put them into the clusters, so into the similar groups. So because we don't have any historical labels on the data, so we would like to put them into the similar groups. So that kind of problem is the clustering problem. Okay, fine. So I think as we keep moving forward, so we would like to understand, because not many people are aware of what kind of problems we can solve with ML, and where lies the opportunity, especially when we are talking about the manufacturing and the industry. So I think initial problem formulation is one of the barrier basically in the deployment of this technology, because in some of the technologies, the applications are very clear. If I have to automate something, if I have to implement a logic into that, I can immediately see I have to do automation. I have to buy this controller and I need to put these sensors, actuators. So it's a very straightforward understanding and approach that is coming out over here. But when it comes to the technologies like ML, the difficulty is to find out the right opportunity for the ML implementation. So people normally try to predict the product sale, remaining useful life. So we need to see what they are right now predicting. So I think that's a starting point. Whenever you are interacting with the customer or the people who would like to, or where you would like to bring out a use case for the machine learning, you can just discuss and find out what they are guessing right now, what kind of decision they are taking subjective based on the understanding. And so they try to predict something. So that's how you can think there's an opportunity for a machine learning implementation. And then they are also using statistics basically, where they are deploying different algorithms which vary in the different complexity. So wherever you see that they are already using some kind of statistics for reaching to a certain conclusions, there lies the possibility of the implementation of machine learning. Most important part is that with the machine learning outcomes, it's not a deterministic outcome. It's as you also understand, it's just a probabilistic outcome, and that outcome is always related with the confidence value. So your predictions are always coming with a confidence rate. So I think that question we will discuss separately later, that which value or what is the outcome that we'll consider basically as a correct outcome, or I should say that, yeah, this prediction is right. How you will be deciding that part, I think I will take a separate discussion on that, and it's a very interesting discussion. Even we'll take an example of the confusion matrix itself. So how these numbers in the confusion matrix is going to impact the business part, what kind of value that will be bringing out, how you will make a comparison in a business sense, because there's always a data scientist perspective. So we can easily say that, yeah, this percent misclassification is there. So if I say it's a 10% misclassification, or if I say there's a 7% misclassification, how to decide basically which way to go ahead, whether this is a suitable model or not, or that's not a suitable model. So we will be looking at all problem in terms of the business perspective also. I think that will take. So only point I'm just going to make over here is that whatever comes with is with an affiliated confidence rate. So nothing is deterministic. Yeah, you cannot say this is an 100% outcome, and even to compare the probabilistic outcome also, you need to know how that is going to impact the whole business. So I think that is an important part over here. So you have already seen the prediction problem, and then you have some classification and problems. So we have 2-3 minutes, but quickly let's go through this. So this is what we try to understand in the regression problems also. So the basics of the regression algorithm, I am sure that you might have seen this. So we have a lot of data to put into the algorithm, and then we would like to have a response coming out of that. So certainly that is what we'll understand with this. So I just take the same example which we have taken in the overview course. So normally what we'll do, we'll try to write an equation of line like this. So in this equation, what we are trying to predict, we are trying to predict the y for a given value of the x. That is how so even in these equations, we are predicting something, or we are calculating something based on the values of the m and b. So once you are aware of m and b, you can find out the value of the y for a given x. That is what is there. In case of a regression problems, where are the challenge in this equation? So because you have already heard about this description in the overview course. So what is the challenge in this equation? Why I cannot use this straightforward equation for all the data that I'm getting into?
Data distributions.
When you say data estimation, means what?
That means how data are distributed. It may be possible they are not distributed linearly.
Correct. So the challenge that we are experiencing is basically knowing the value of the right value of the m and b, means the slope, actually predicting the slope. So from the given set of the data, how to get a right slope, which I can use for predicting the value of y once I know the relationship, right? So in this case, if you see that once I know the deterministic value of m and b for each case, I can very well predicting, because for any given value of the x, I will be getting in the corresponding value of y. But this value of y depends on how correctly I have understood the value of m and b. And there lies the challenge in the different regression algorithms. How accurately, how correctly they are able to give you the values of the slope and the b. So that is what, so this is clear that once you know this m and b, you put x equal to 1, you got 3. Now when it comes to the regression problem, you will see that most of the time you have the data. You don't know the m and b in advance. You don't have an equation as such. What you are having a data only, and from that data, what you will be doing now, you need to fit this equation. And then while for fitting this equation, I need to know what are the values of the m and b. So these are the unknowns for me, and the known is the data. In case of an equation where I know m and b, my unknown is x, and I can, my unknown is y, and then I can find out the value of y for a given x. So in this case, for a given data set, how precisely you will be able to get m and b, that is what the regression prediction is. Basically, our regression model fitting is that. So it's very simple. Now you have the data sets. It's a very well organized data set, so you can easily find there's a straight line and able to predict. So how these data points are scattered around this straight line fit decides basically how much is the root mean square error. And from that kind of an error, you will be able to find out whether the model is correct or not. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to fit one single line around this data point. So now you can easily understand why this is not going to represent deterministically all the outcomes for for a given x value. So for a given x value, you will be now predicting based on this model only. So if I just tilt the slope of a line differently, I will be getting a different value. So we need to predict the values within that confidence rate only. That is the objective over here. Now, because it's a two-dimensional problem, because you are only using one independent variable and one dependent variable, it looks like a very simple problem. And as you were looking at the machine learning, the machining data that I was showing you earlier, many times you have a lot of attributes and against which you have to predict the target. So that is how, so once you know this, then you can make use of this and you can predict it. This is just a linear regression, but what I'm just trying to say, it's never 100%. First of all, this we need to keep in mind, and same thing we need to communicate to the people who are expecting the outcome from these models also. I think that should be very clear. People are mistakenly taking machine learning, whatever coming out, because they are habitual of using a deterministic models. They believe that whatever is coming is correct. So machine learning is predicting this, it means that's 100% correct. No, they should always have that clarity and what kind of model is giving what kind of errors to them. Just conclude in this. So in this case, practical problems are like this. That is how we need different algorithms to help me in predicting now these coefficients over here. So it's not such a simple 2-variable problem. It's a multi-variable problem. That's how you have to deal with the multiple linear regression model. So that's how a lot of algorithms are available to help you in predicting these coefficients for multiple variables. And then we will again just using those models to predict and then analyze the model for and evaluate that model, that how much correct value it is predicting. So I think that is just a quick start today. We will continue our discussions as we go along, and looking forward that at least you will start your first experiment tomorrow. So we'll meet at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you very much, and we will just keep working in this direction together to find out a good use cases for machine learning in manufacturing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and attention, and we look forward to work together in this journey.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.